the night Arun Malhotra was executed by hanging. The prison clock stopped at exactly 2:17 a.m., and though the guards dismissed it as a mechanical failure, every man present felt the sudden drop in temperature that crept under their uniforms like icy fingers searching for a pulse. Because Arun Malhotra was not just a murderer, he was the kind of killer whose presence lingered long after the body fell still, whose eyes never begged for mercy but instead stared calmly as if memorizing the faces of everyone who watched him die. And as the trapdoor opened and his neck snapped with a sound like a dry branch breaking, a thin smile curved his lips, unnoticed by most but burned permanently into the mind of junior guard Ramesh, who would later swear that Arun whispered, "This is not the end," before the rope tightened, and when the doctor pronounced him dead, something unseen slipped out of that lifeless body and into the darkness beyond the prison walls. Because 3 months later, in the same city that had finally begun to breathe again after Arun's execution, people started disappearing in ways disturbingly familiar. Bodies found posed with surgical precision, eyes removed, fingers arranged in symbols only Arun used to leave behind, and the city drowned once more in fear as newspapers screamed the impossible truth. The killer is back, though officials denied it and called it a copycat. But those who had known Arun, those who had interrogated him, those who had watched him die, felt something deeper than logic screaming inside them, especially Inspector Kabir Singh, the man who had hunted Arun for 5 years and had personally snapped the cuffs around his wrists on the night of his arrest, because Kabir remembered how Arun had leaned close and whispered, "You can kill the body, Inspector, but what will you do with what lives underneath?" And now Kabir stood again over mutilated corpses, his hands shaking not from fear but from recognition, because no copycat could replicate the intimate cruelty of Arun's methods, the way he carved memories into flesh, the way he chose victims connected by invisible threads of guilt. And as Kabir followed the trail, the killings grew bolder, happening closer to the prison, closer to the gallows room itself, until one night a guard was found dead inside the execution chamber. Throat slit, eyes wide open, and written on the wall in blood were the words, "I walked out." And that was when Kabir finally admitted the truth he had been avoiding, that Arun had never feared death because he had planned for it. Because during interrogation Arun had spoken obsessively about ancient rituals, about souls that refused to cross over, about hatred strong enough to anchor a spirit to the world of the living, and Kabir had dismissed it as madness. But now the case files felt heavier, the words darker, as if they had been waiting to be read with understanding. And Kabir tracked down Dr. Meera Ir, a forensic psychologist who had once evaluated Arun and had resigned from the case claiming ethical reasons. Though now she confessed in a trembling voice that Arun was not insane but empty, that he lacked something fundamental that tethered humans to life and death, and that during their final session he had asked her a chilling question: what happens if a man dies but refuses to accept it? And as Meera spoke, the lights in her apartment flickered and a cold breath brushed Kabir's neck, though no window was open, and the mirror behind Meera began to fog from the inside, letters slowly forming backward as if written by invisible fingers, spelling Kabir's name, and before either could react, Meera collapsed, her neck twisted at an impossible angle, eyes missing, and Kabir fled the apartment, knowing now that Arun was not killing randomly but hunting everyone who had played a role in his death. And as the city descended into chaos, Kabir realized with horror that the final name on Arun's list was his own. Because that night Kabir began hearing footsteps in his locked apartment, smelling the metallic scent of blood where none existed, seeing reflections that moved when he did not, and in every mirror Arun's smiling face appeared briefly before dissolving into darkness, whispering reminders of every mistake Kabir had ever made, every compromise, every buried guilt, feeding on them, growing stronger, until Kabir understood the truth too late, that Arun was no longer bound by flesh, that death had stripped away his limits, and the more fear he spread, the more real he became. And in a final desperate attempt Kabir returned to the prison gallows, believing that the place of death could also be the place of banishment. But as he stepped into the execution chamber, the door slammed shut, the rope swayed gently, though untouched, and Arun's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, thanking Kabir for believing in him at last. Because belief, Arun explained, was the final ingredient, and as the lights shattered and darkness swallowed the room, Kabir felt hands tightening around his throat, cold and strong, lifting him toward the noose that had once killed a man but now fed a monster. And as Kabir's vision blurred, he understood the final horror, that Arun had not come back from death, because he had never truly left. And the last thing Kabir heard before the darkness took him was Arun's satisfied whisper promising that as long as fear existed, as long as guilt rotted in human hearts, he would keep coming back again and again, long after bodies stopped breathing and names faded into whispers.